Have you ever imagined pinning pictures of your biggest dreams onto a simple board, and then, a year later, realizing that every detail had become reality? Could it really be that life responds so precisely to our thoughts and desires? What if I told you that an ordinary woman with fears, doubts, and overdue bills decided to test the law of attraction by creating a vision board, and the impossible happened? This is the story of Hannah Peterson, a young woman who completely transformed her life by discovering the power of visualizing, believing, and feeling as if she was already living the life she most desired. A real, powerful, and inspiring story that will show you how her dreams, one by one, began materializing right before her eyes. Hannah was 29 years old and lived in Seattle, a cold, often gray city that reflected exactly the stage of life she was in. She worked at a small graphic design company, but was far from fulfilling the dreams she had carried since her teenage years. Her heart longed for bigger experiences. She wanted to travel the world, explore new cultures, live a great love story, own a home with a breathtaking view, and feel that her life truly had meaning. Despite her creativity and dedication, she felt trapped in a draining routine where her paycheck barely covered the rent of her tiny apartment, transportation costs, and basic groceries. Hannah had always been a dreamer, but in recent years she had begun to lose faith in herself. Often, as she sat in front of her computer at work, staring out the window, she wondered if this was all life had to offer. Time was passing, her friends seemed to be moving forward, some getting married, others building solid careers, while she remained in the same place, like running on a treadmill that led nowhere. One Saturday afternoon, alone at home, scrolling through YouTube in search of some kind of motivation, Hannah came across a talk about the law of attraction. The video had millions of views, and one phrase in particular caught her attention. Everything you hold clearly in your mind and feel with true emotion, the universe conspires to bring to you. At first she laughed. It sounded far too fanciful for someone so used to life's harshness. Yet something inside her made her keep watching. For the first time in a long while, it felt like someone was offering her a real possibility of change. After finishing the video, Hannah couldn't stop thinking about it. She started researching more on the subject and came across testimonials from people who claimed to have completely transformed their lives by applying visualization and gratitude. Some stories seemed too incredible to believe, but others felt so relatable to her own life that they sparked a flame of hope in her heart. For the first time in months, she went to bed feeling hopeful. In the days that followed, Hannah dove deeper into the topic. She discovered books, documentaries, and forums filled with people who practiced the law of attraction daily. Among all the techniques she found, one stood out to her in particular: the vision board. The concept was simple. Gather images, quotes, and symbols that represent your biggest desires. Place them on a board and look at them every day, believing they were already real. The idea intrigued her deeply. Hannah had always loved visual arts and design, so creating something that combined aesthetics with purpose felt perfect. More than that, there was something powerful in the thought of seeing all her dreams gathered in one place, turned into a concrete image. She asked herself, what if it's true? What if I really can change my life this way? Determined to try, Hannah went to a stationery store near her home and bought a large poster board, some colorful ribbons, glue, and pins. Then she spent an entire afternoon flipping through travel, fashion, and home decor magazines and printing photos from the internet. Sitting on her living room floor with all the materials spread out around her, she felt like she was about to take the first step towards something bigger. She began carefully pasting a picture of a modern house with huge windows and an incredible ocean view. That image represented the freedom and security she so deeply longed for. Next, she added a photo of Paris, with the Eiffel Tower glowing against the night sky. Traveling to Europe had been one of her greatest dreams since her teenage years. She added a picture of a smiling couple holding hands, representing the true love she hadn't yet found, but so deeply desired. In the top corner of the board, she pinned a quote that read, "I am abundant. I deserve the best in life." As she placed those words, Hannah realized she was beginning to reprogram her mind. It felt strange to repeat to herself that she was abundant when she was still struggling to pay her bills, but at the same time, it brought her a sense of relief and strength. Finally, she added an image of a creative design agency, her dream job where she could work on projects she truly loved. When she finished, she sat in silence, just observing the board in front of her. It felt like a window into her future, a visual representation of everything she desired most. It seemed almost impossible to believe that any of it could become reality, but Hannah decided she wouldn't just paste pictures, she would feel. From that day on, she created a new routine. Every morning, upon waking, before even checking her phone, she sat in front of her vision board and spent a few minutes contemplating every detail. She closed her eyes and imagined herself inside that house overlooking the sea, feeling the breeze through the windows. She visualized walking through the streets of Paris, hearing conversations in French and smelling freshly baked croissants. She pictured holding the hand of someone special, laughing about silly things, sharing dreams. And most importantly, she felt the excitement of working at a place that inspired her and made her wake up eager for the day. At first, Hannah felt a little ridiculous doing it. There were moments when she thought, "I'm just playing pretend, this will never happen." But interestingly, over the weeks, she began noticing small changes. Simply dedicating a few minutes each day to feeling happy and fulfilled was shifting her energy. She realized she was waking up lighter, more optimistic, and even her attitude at work had changed. One day, a colleague commented, "Hannah, you seem different lately, more cheerful, even your smile looks brighter." She smiled back but didn't reveal what she had been doing. Deep down, she feared being judged. Still, something within her knew she was on the right path. Gradually, she also began practicing gratitude. Every night before bed, she wrote down 3 things she was grateful for that day. Sometimes they were simple, a good cup of coffee, a pleasant conversation. Other times they were more significant, the support of her family, or the opportunity to have a job. This habit expanded her perspective. Instead of focusing only on what was missing, she began noticing the abundance already present in her life. It was during this period that Hannah felt something shift inside her. She hadn't yet achieved any of the big dreams on her board, but for the first time in years, she was experiencing peace and hope. She felt aligned with a new energy, as if she was preparing herself for something greater that was still to come. After a few weeks of practicing visualization and gratitude daily, Hannah began noticing subtle changes in her life. They weren't yet the big dreams from her vision board, but small events that seemed full of meaning. At first, she thought it was just coincidence. But as the days passed, those coincidences became more frequent and specific, as if something invisible was responding to her energy. It all started with what seemed like a simple situation, an unexpected invitation. Hannah had always dreamed of traveling, but for years she hadn't left Seattle due to lack of money and time. One Monday morning, while drinking coffee, she received a message from her childhood friend, Claire, who lived in California. "Hannah, I got some time off work and I'm planning to spend a few days in San Francisco. Why don't you come too? You'd only need to pay for your ticket. You can stay with me. We'll split food costs." At that moment, Hannah froze. On her vision board, she had placed a picture of Paris, it's true, but deep down, what she longed for was the experience of traveling, of being in new places. San Francisco wasn't Paris, but it was the first invitation in a long time to break out of her routine. Her heart raced. For hours she debated whether to accept or decline. Her paycheck was tight, and spending on flights seemed risky. But something inside her, a strong intuition, told her she should go. She remembered the affirmations she had been repeating every day in front of her board. "I deserve the best in life. I am abundant." She decided to trust. She bought the ticket. The trip to San Francisco was short but transformative. Being in a new city, walking through its vibrant streets, seeing the Golden Gate Bridge up close gave her an indescribable sense of freedom. Hannah realized that by allowing herself to say yes, she was making space for life to show her new possibilities. When she returned to Seattle, she felt renewed, as if she had tasted a piece of the future she longed to live. That was the first sign, but others began to follow. At work, Hannah had always felt underestimated. She produced good projects, but rarely received recognition. A few weeks after starting her vision board routine, a company client asked to speak with her directly. "I really liked your design proposal. You have a unique perspective. I hope you'll be leading more projects like this." The words caught her off guard. No one had ever acknowledged her creativity so clearly before. She felt a wave of confidence rise within her. Shortly after, something even more curious happened. One day, as she left the subway, Hannah passed by a newsstand and noticed a travel magazine open precisely to a page about Paris. The Eiffel Tower glowing at night was there, exactly like the image on her vision board. She stopped, stared at the picture, and felt a shiver run down her spine. It was as if the universe was winking at her, saying, "Keep going, you're on the right path." These little coincidences began to multiply. One night, while watching a random movie on TV, a scene appeared showing a couple walking hand in hand across a bridge in Paris. On another occasion, while browsing online, she saw an ad promoting discounts on creative design courses. They were images and situations that spoke directly to the desires she had pinned to her board. Hannah began to realize that the key wasn't just visualizing, but also acting when opportunities arise. Before, she might have ignored the course ad, but now she felt compelled to click. She discovered it was an affordable online course with renowned teachers, something that could boost her career. She signed up. Every step, however small, seemed to open more space for the new. However, along with the signs, challenges also appeared. As she got closer to her desires, Hannah noticed her old mindset still trying to pull her back. There were days she woke up discouraged, with thoughts like, "You're just fooling yourself, this will never work." In those moments, she felt like giving up. But whenever she looked at her vision board, she remembered the commitment she had made to herself, not just to paste images, but to feel as if it was already real. It was on one of those doubtful days that something remarkable happened. After work, she stopped at a cafe to have hot chocolate. While waiting, she overheard two women at the next table talking. One of them was sharing how she had finally gotten her dream house after years of believing it was impossible. Hannah couldn't help but listen, astonished at how similar that story sounded to her own journey. She didn't have the courage to interrupt, but left the cafe with her heart racing. It felt as if the universe was placing messages along her path to remind her she was moving in the right direction. As months passed, the signs became so clear that Hannah could no longer ignore them. Trips began appearing as invitations, professional opportunities surfaced unexpectedly, and even her loneliness started to fade. At a networking event organized by colleagues from her online course, she met inspiring people, including someone who awakened in her a special feeling, as if it could be the beginning of something meaningful. Hannah realized that the law of attraction wasn't just about waiting for miracles to happen. It was about aligning her thoughts, emotions, and actions in the same direction. Her vision board worked as a daily reminder that she could choose to live the life she desired. Deep down, she knew these were only the first steps. The trip to Paris hadn't happened yet, and the house overlooking the ocean was still a distant dream. But each small sign was making her stronger. More importantly, she began to understand that the true transformation wasn't just in what she was achieving, but in who she was becoming along the journey. After a few weeks of practicing visualization and gratitude daily, Hannah began to notice subtle changes in her life. They weren't yet the big dreams displayed on her vision board, but small events that seemed full of meaning. At first, she thought it was just coincidence. However, as the days went by, these coincidences became more frequent and specific, as if something invisible was responding to her energy. It all started with what seemed like a simple situation, an unexpected invitation. Hannah had always dreamed of traveling, but for years she hadn't left Seattle due to lack of money and time. One Monday morning, while drinking her coffee, she received a message from her childhood friend Claire, who lived in California. "Hannah, I got some time off work, and I'm planning to spend a few days in San Francisco. Why don't you come too? You'll only need to pay for your ticket. You can stay with me. We'll split the food costs." In that moment, Hannah froze. On her vision board, she had placed an image of Paris, it's true, but deep down, what she really longed for was the experience of traveling, of being in different places. Going to San Francisco wasn't Paris, but it was the first invitation in a long time to break away from her routine. Her heart raced. For hours, she went back and forth between accepting or declining. Her salary was tight, and spending money on flights seemed risky. But something inside her, a strong intuition, told her she should go. She remembered the affirmations she repeated every day in front of her board. "I deserve the best in life. I am abundant." She decided to trust. She bought the ticket. The trip to San Francisco was short but transformative. Being in a new city, walking through its vibrant streets, seeing the Golden Gate Bridge up close, brought an indescribable sense of freedom. Hannah realized that by allowing herself to say yes, she was opening space for life to show her new possibilities. When she returned to Seattle, she felt renewed, as if she had tasted a piece of the future she longed to live. That was the first sign, but others began to appear. At work, Hannah had always felt underestimated. She delivered good projects, but rarely received recognition. A few weeks after beginning her vision board routine, a company client asked to speak directly with her. "I really liked your design proposal. You have a unique perspective. I hope you'll be leading more projects like this." The words caught her by surprise. Never before had anyone so clearly acknowledged her creativity. A wave of confidence surged within her. Shortly after, something even more curious happened. One day, leaving the subway, Hannah walked past a newsstand and saw a travel magazine open on the page of Paris. The Eiffel Tower glowing at night was right there, exactly like the image on her vision board. She stopped, stared at the picture, and felt a shiver run down her spine. It was as if the universe was winking at her, saying, "Keep going, you're on the right path." These little coincidences began multiplying. One evening, while watching a random movie on TV, a scene appeared showing a couple walking hand in hand across a bridge in Paris. On another occasion, while browsing online, she saw an ad offering discounts on creative design courses. They were images and situations that spoke directly to the desires she had placed on her board. Hannah began to realize that the key wasn't just visualizing, but also acting when opportunities appeared. Before, she might have ignored the ad for the course, but now she felt compelled to click. She discovered it was an affordable online course with renowned teachers, something that could boost her career. She enrolled. Each step, however small, seemed to open even more space for the new. Yet, along with the signs came challenges. As she got closer to her desires, Hannah noticed her old mindset still trying to pull her back. Some days she woke up discouraged, with thoughts like, "You're just fooling yourself. This is never going to work." In those moments, she felt like giving up. But whenever she looked at her vision board, she remembered the commitment she had made to herself, not just to paste images, but to feel as if it was already real. It was on one of those doubtful days that something remarkable happened. After work, she stopped at a cafe for hot chocolate. While waiting, she noticed two women at the next table talking. One of them was sharing how she had managed to get her dream house after years of believing it was impossible. Hannah couldn't help but overhear, and she was struck by how similar that story was to her own journey. She didn't have the courage to interrupt, but she left with her heart pounding. It felt as if the universe was placing messages along her path to remind her she was heading the right way. As months passed, the signs became so clear Hannah could no longer ignore them. Trips started appearing as invitations, professional opportunities emerged unexpectedly, and even the sense of loneliness began to fade.
At a networking event organized by colleagues from her online course, she met inspiring people, including someone who awakened in her a different feeling, as if it could be the beginning of something special. Hannah realized that the law of attraction wasn't just waiting for miracles to happen. It was about aligning her thoughts, emotions, and actions in the same direction. Her vision board worked as a daily reminder that she could choose to live the life she desired. Deep down, she knew these were only the first steps. The trip to Paris hadn't happened yet, and the house with an ocean view was still a distant dream. But each small sign made her stronger. And more than that, she began to understand that the true transformation wasn't only in what she was achieving, but in who she was becoming along the journey.
Months went by, and Hannah remained faithful to her routine. Every morning in front of her vision board, feeling, imagining, and giving thanks as if each image were already part of her life. She had learned to recognize the signs, but now something even more powerful was about to happen. Her desires began to leave the realm of the imaginary and step into reality. It all began with the online creative design course she had decided to take. At first, she enrolled on impulse, thinking it would be something small. But in the very first week, she realized that course was much more than just a training. It was a portal of opportunities. The instructors were internationally recognized professionals, people who worked in major agencies and shared not only techniques but also valuable contacts. During classes, Hannah dedicated herself with passion. She spent entire nights developing projects, reviewing details, submitting assignments beyond what was required. Her energy had shifted. She was no longer the young woman working just to pay the bills, but someone who believed her talent could open real doors. Then something seemingly improbable happened. One of her instructors, impressed by her work, mentioned her in a meeting with a partner agency. A few days later, she received an email. "Hannah, we loved your portfolio. Would you be available for an online interview?" She could hardly believe it. For years, she had dreamed of working in a creative agency, and now she was facing a real opportunity. That day, before the interview, she spent long minutes in front of her vision board, staring at the image she had pasted months earlier of a modern, inspiring agency. She took a deep breath, felt as if she were already living that future. When the video call began, she was more confident than ever. The interview went so well that a week later she received the news. She had been hired to work on projects as a freelancer, with a chance of becoming permanent. It was the first major victory that came directly from the alignment between visualization and action. This achievement changed everything. With new jobs, her income began to rise. She no longer had to worry about every penny of her rent, and for the first time, she could save some money for her travel dreams. It was as if the universe had taken a step toward her, responding to the movement she had made. Meanwhile, Hannah's personal life also began showing signs of transformation. At networking events promoted by the course, she met several interesting people. One in particular caught her attention. Ethan, a young architect passionate about travel and photography. At first, their conversations were purely professional, exchanges about projects and creative references. But gradually, a deeper connection began to form. He spoke about Paris with a sparkle in his eyes, since he had studied in France years earlier. When he described the city, Hannah felt as if she were there, walking through the streets with him. It was during this time that she experienced one of the most remarkable moments of her journey. While organizing her things at home, she impulsively decided to revisit her vision board. Her eyes stopped at the image of the couple walking hand in hand. For the first time, instead of feeling it as a distant projection, she had the clear sensation that it was already happening. Her heart raced. Perhaps Ethan was part of that image, or maybe it was just the beginning of something bigger. But in any case, there was a strong feeling of fulfillment approaching. Shortly after, another powerful sign appeared. Browsing the internet, Hannah saw a flash sale for flights to Europe. Among the destinations on offer was Paris. The price was so low it seemed unbelievable. For a few seconds, she thought she shouldn't spend the money yet, that she needed to wait for the right moment.
But then she remembered everything she had learned. The universe responds when you open yourself to receive. Without overthinking, she clicked buy. At that moment, tears filled her eyes. For months, she had been staring at that image on her board, and now she held in her hands the confirmation of a trip to Paris. It was as if life were clearly showing her that dreams really could leave the paper. With each step, Hannah realized the most important thing wasn't just the results themselves, but the state of mind she was cultivating. Before, she had lived in scarcity, believing nothing would change. Now she felt part of an abundant flow where opportunities appeared at the right time. But the journey also brought lessons. Alongside her new achievements, she still had to deal with old patterns of fear. For instance, when she received the flight confirmation, part of her grew anxious. What if something goes wrong? What if I don't have enough money to enjoy it? What if it's a mistake to take such a risk? In those moments, she returned to her gratitude practices and refocused on her board. She understood she didn't need to control every detail, just trust and take the steps within her reach. As her work grew, Hannah decided to renew her apartment. It wasn't yet the modern house with an ocean view, but she wanted to transform it into a space that reflected her new energy. She painted the walls in light tones, bought some plants, and hung pictures representing travel. Small changes that for her were signs she was getting closer to the life she had envisioned. It was during this process of inner and outer transformation that Hannah experienced one of her most special days. Ethan invited her to a photography exhibition about Parisian architecture. Walking among the displayed images, Hannah felt chills. Many of those photos were identical to the one she had pasted on her vision board. Her heart raced. She looked at Ethan and noticed he was watching her with a different smile, as if both of them knew something important was happening. That night, when she returned home, she sat in front of her vision board and cried. Not out of sadness, but out of deep gratitude. For the first time, she clearly realized that what once seemed distant was becoming real step by step. She still didn't have the house with an ocean view. She still hadn't reached all the goals on her board. But within her, something had changed forever. The certainty that life could indeed be shaped by her thoughts, feelings, and actions. The materialization of dreams was not a matter of if, but of when. And, surprisingly, that when seemed closer than ever.
Time passed, and each new dawn brought Hannah Peterson the feeling of walking along an invisible road, one where each step was not only taken in the physical world, but also within herself. She had learned that the law of attraction was not instant magic, but a continuous process, one that required patience, trust, and, above all, consistency. Hannah began every morning with a simple yet powerful ritual. She woke up a few minutes before sunrise, took deep breaths, and, with her eyes still closed, visualized the kind of day she wished to have. It didn't matter if it was cold, rainy, or if her routine seemed heavy. She knew her inner vibration was more important than any external circumstance. She visualized happy encounters, good news, and unexpected opportunities appearing on her path. And day by day, small synchronicities began to unfold. It was as if the universe were sending her signs, confirming that she was on the right path. Sometimes it was a phrase in a book she happened to read, answering her doubts directly. Other times it was an unexpected phone call from someone she hadn't spoken to in years, bringing exactly the information she needed at that moment. Hannah learned to pay attention to these signs, realizing that nothing was a coincidence. However, even with all this progress, there were difficult days. Days when fear knocked on her door again, when old patterns of insecurity tried to creep back in. In those moments, Hannah reminded herself that true transformation didn't only happen when everything was going well, but especially when the mind insisted on pulling her backward. Those were the moments when she chose to remain firm, repeating her affirmations, seeking gratitude even in the smallest things, and reminding herself that the process was just as important as the outcome.
One evening, after an especially heavy day, when it seemed all her efforts had been in vain, Hannah sat in front of the mirror and looked into her own eyes. Tears were building up, but so was a flame of determination that refused to go out. She realized she didn't have to wait for life to change in order to feel whole. Wholeness, in truth, was born within her. With that understanding, she smiled through tears and said aloud, "I trust the process. I am the creator of my reality." That was a silent milestone in her journey. From that point on, Hannah wasn't just chasing external results. She was seeking to live in harmony with who she truly was. And as her heart expanded, her life began to reflect this new state of consciousness in deeper and more meaningful ways. Little by little, Hannah Peterson's life began to take an unexpected turn, but not before placing her in front of new challenges that would test her faith, her patience, and her determination. After years drowning in debt, feelings of helplessness, and sleepless nights, it finally seemed that a light was beginning to appear at the end of the tunnel. It wasn't complete victory yet, but it was a breath of hope that made her heart beat stronger. She had managed to renegotiate part of her debts with the bank, something that months earlier seemed impossible. That suffocating feeling of being buried under bills and deadlines was slowly giving way to a new reality. Yet the process was not easy. Each morning as she opened her eyes, Hannah faced a storm of thoughts. What if it doesn't work? What if I fail again? What if everything collapses once more? Those questions haunted her like persistent echoes, reminding her of a past where doubt and fear had dictated her choices. But this time, something was different. In the middle of uncertainty, she had found a new source of strength: gratitude. That simple practice, which at first seemed almost naive, had become an anchor in her life. Every night before bed, she wrote down at least 3 things she was grateful for. In the beginning, it was hard. "What am I grateful for?" she asked herself, staring at overdue bills, old furniture, and a constant feeling of exhaustion. Yet she forced herself to find something: her children's smiles, an unexpected hug from her youngest daughter, a hot cup of coffee in the morning. Small things, but over time they began to transform how she saw the world. This practice created space for something new, a shift in perspective. Where once she only saw lack, she began to see possibilities. When she looked at the same torn sofa in her living room, instead of feeling ashamed, she remembered the stories lived there: laughter, late-night conversations, evenings when everyone gathered to watch a movie. That wasn't just an old piece of furniture, it was a symbol of resilience, unity, and love. As months passed, Hannah realized her life wasn't only changing financially, but emotionally and spiritually too. She was learning to trust again. And with that trust came unexpected opportunities. One day, while helping an elderly neighbor organize some papers, she received an offer that surprised her. The neighbor's daughter, who worked at a small accounting firm, needed someone to help with documents, phone calls, and client service. The salary wasn't high, but it was steady, stable, and, most importantly, it was a chance. Hannah accepted immediately, feeling it was the step she needed to start rebuilding her path. The work required discipline and dedication, but it also gave her something she hadn't felt in a long time: dignity. Each day she left home to work was a reminder that she still had value, that her skills and determination hadn't been erased by hardship. What once felt like mere survival began to transform into purpose. Yet along with this new chapter came inner challenges. Hannah still carried invisible scars: the fear of failing, the insecurity around others, the doubt about her true potential. There were evenings when, after returning home, the weight of those questions overwhelmed her. But unlike before, she no longer let herself drown. She took a deep breath, opened her gratitude journal, and wrote, "I am grateful for my job. I am grateful I can put dinner on the table for my kids. I am grateful for the second chance life has given me. Little by little, this habit reshaped her mind, reprogramming her thoughts. She began to believe she wasn't just a victim of circumstances, but the protagonist of her own story. This new perspective awakened a quiet but powerful courage within her. One day, during a company meeting, Hannah listened to the team discussing growth strategies and realized she had ideas to contribute. Her heart raced, her hands sweated, and for a moment she almost stayed silent. After all, who was she to speak up? But something inside her whispered, "You can." And for the first time in years, she raised her hand and shared her opinion. To her surprise, her colleagues listened attentively, and the manager praised her suggestion. That simple moment became a turning point. Hannah realized her voice had value. This newfound confidence didn't stay confined to her professional life. At home, she began to change her attitude as well. Instead of constantly complaining about what was missing, she started to celebrate what they already had. Her children felt the difference. The energy at home became lighter, more welcoming. They began to believe that together they could overcome anything. Hannah's transformation also inspired those around her. Her neighbor, the same woman who had recommended her for the job, once said, "You're different, Hannah. You seem stronger, more alive." Those words touched her deeply, confirming something she herself had already begun to sense. Her light was shining again. Even so, the journey wasn't linear. There were days when everything seemed to collapse once more. An unexpected financial setback, a child's brief illness, or painful memories of past mistakes. In those moments, despair tried to creep back in. But now, Hannah had tools to deal with it. Instead of giving in to panic, she breathed, returned to gratitude, and repeated affirmations she had learned from books on faith and personal growth. Over time, this practice grew deep roots. Hannah was no longer the woman who once felt trapped by debt. She had been reborn, rebuilt her self-esteem, and learned to value every achievement, no matter how small. At the end of a year of steady work, discipline, and a changed mindset, Hannah managed to pay off another significant part of her debts. It was as if with each payment she removed a stone that had once weighed down her shoulders. The relief was undescribable. But more than that, she realized the true miracle wasn't just in the money coming in. It was in the transformation happening within her. She understood that abundance isn't only about numbers in a bank account, but about the way we choose to see life. And by adopting gratitude as a way of living, she discovered that prosperity begins in the mind and the heart. One night, as she watched her children sleeping, Hannah cried silently, but this time not out of sadness. She cried out of deep gratitude. Because even though she didn't yet have everything she wished for, she had what truly mattered: love, faith, and the certainty that tomorrow could be better. That was the true victory.
After weeks immersed in new practices, readings, and moments of deep reflection, Hannah began to feel that she was crossing a turning point in her life. It was not just about paying off debts, overcoming despair, or achieving a more peaceful life. There was something much greater happening within her. For the first time, she realized that her entire reality was a direct reflection of her consciousness. This realization struck her deeply. For years, Hannah had believed she was a victim of circumstances. The system, the bills that never balanced, the bad luck that seemed to chase her, the burden of raising a family alone. But now something inside her was shifting. She understood that the key had never been outside, but within. One morning, waking before sunrise, Hannah sat on the edge of her bed and stayed silent for a few minutes. The house was still asleep. The silence was broken only by the gentle sound of the wind outside. She closed her eyes and placed her hands over her chest, breathing deeply. In that instant, a phrase she had once read from Neville Goddard came to her with an almost supernatural clarity. You already are what you wish to be. Accept it as truth and live from that awareness. The words echoed in her mind as if they were a direct revelation. She realized she no longer needed to wait to be free, prosperous, or fulfilled. All of that already existed within her, and what was missing was simply embracing that identity now, even before any results showed up in the physical world. That same day, Hannah decided she would live as if she were already abundant. Not in an irresponsible way, but in her attitude, in her thoughts, and in her emotions. When going to the market, she would no longer look only at prices or at the fear of not having enough. She would look at the food as divine provision, a gift already guaranteed in her life. When speaking with her children, she would no longer show exhaustion or constant worry. Instead, she would radiate security, confidence, and hope. The change did not happen overnight. Many times she still caught herself feeling fear, doubt, or sadness. But now there was a difference. Instead of drowning in those emotions, Hannah observed them and let them pass. She understood they were only echoes of her old self and no longer had to dictate her present. Her nightly prayers also gained new depth. They were no longer desperate pleas for things to change. Now they became moments of anticipatory gratitude. Hannah learned to feel in her heart that the miracle had already happened, even before any outer evidence. She wept, no longer from despair, but from profound gratitude, as if she were already living the life she longed for. Through this daily practice, something curious began to happen. Opportunities that had once seemed invisible began to appear. An old colleague, whom she hadn't seen in years, contacted her offering a partnership on a small online project. A neighbor introduced her to a support community that helped families in financial hardship, providing free courses on planning and entrepreneurship. Even unexpected situations, discounts on overdue bills, or small sums of money showing up surprisingly, began to manifest. But more important than these external changes was the inner transformation Hannah experienced. She no longer recognized herself as the desperate woman who once cried silently every night. Now there was a flame of confidence within her, an unshakable certainty that she was being guided by something greater. One night, as she watched her children sleeping, Hannah had a moment of epiphany. She realized that everything she was learning was not just for her, but also for them. By transforming her consciousness, she was changing the emotional and spiritual inheritance she would leave behind. Her children would no longer grow up in an atmosphere of fear and lack, but in one of faith, confidence, and abundance. That thought filled her with purpose. She decided then not only to share hope, but also to teach. In simple conversations around the table, she began telling her children about the importance of thoughts, about believing that good things are coming, about being grateful for what they already have. They weren't sermons, but life lessons delivered with love. To her surprise, the children began responding positively. The youngest, who once always asked for toys and complained about what he didn't have, started saying things like, "Mommy, I know we'll have better things soon." The oldest, who understood more, began helping her plan household expenses, but always with an optimistic attitude, as if they were preparing the ground for something greater. This awakening of consciousness also gave Hannah new courage. She no longer shrank before problems. If an unexpected bill arrived, instead of panicking with a racing heart and trembling hands, she breathed deeply and told herself, "This too shall pass. I am already abundant. The solution already exists." And almost miraculously, solutions would appear. But the greatest miracle was still to come. One sunny morning, Hannah received a phone call that would change everything. It was from a company she had applied to months earlier and from which she no longer expected a response. They invited her to an interview. Her heart raced, but not with fear, with confidence. Deep down, she knew this was just another manifestation of the new consciousness she had been creating. On the day of the interview, instead of wearing the old, worn-out clothes of insecurity, Hannah chose to prepare herself carefully. It didn't matter that the dress was simple. She wore it with dignity, as if she were the most prosperous person in that room.
During the conversation with the recruiters, she didn't speak from lack or desperate need, but from her value, her skills, and her vision for the future. She left with the certainty that she had left a mark. Days later, the news came. Hannah got the job. It was a position better paid than any she had ever held, with benefits that would bring security for her and her children. She fell to her knees in the living room, tears streaming down her face, but this time they were tears of victory. That night, lying in bed, Hannah couldn't sleep right away. She stared at the ceiling, reflecting on her whole journey. The despair, the prayers, the anticipatory gratitude, the inner transformation, everything had led to this moment. And in her heart, one truth settled firmly. What had really changed was not only her financial situation or professional opportunity, but her consciousness. Hannah Peterson had awakened to the truth that had always been there. The external reality is only a reflection of the internal reality. And from that moment on, she knew she would never be the same again. Hannah Peterson had already traveled a path of pain, learning, and rebuilding, but life, as always, seemed to hold new tests to measure the depth of her transformation. After finding faith through gratitude and visualization, her life began to blossom in small details. The job that once felt like a burden now became an opportunity, as her positive energy attracted recognition. Colleagues who once ignored her began seeking her opinion, and even her boss, a rigid man of few words, began showing respect for her new attitude. However, Hannah knew her greatest challenge was not in the workplace or the outside world. It was at home, in the memories and remnants of the emotional battles she still faced with her family. Her husband, David, though he had witnessed her transformation, still carried his own scars from financial pressure, sleepless nights, and the sense of failure that had settled in before Hannah discovered the inner strength guiding her. He loved her, but at times seemed unable to believe that things could truly work out. Still, Hannah did not give up. Every night, before sleeping, she wrote in her gratitude journal. She recorded not only the good events, but also the trials, because she had learned that even moments of pain held hidden lessons. "I am grateful for today's challenge, for it teaches me to trust even more," she wrote in firm letters, even when her heart felt heavy. One day, walking in the park near her home, Hannah realized something had shifted in her perception of the world. The sun, which once seemed like just another detail of routine, now became a symbol of rebirth. The birds' songs sounded like reminders that life always finds a way to bloom, even after the harshest winters. She smiled to herself, aware that she was learning to see abundance where she once saw lack. This new vision began reflecting in her children as well. Little Emily, who struggled with anxiety from feeling the weight of household tension, began to feel safer. One night, as Hannah tucked her in and told her a bedtime story, the girl whispered, "Mommy, I like you better now. Your smile is different." That phrase, so innocent and sincere, brought tears to Hannah's eyes. She realized her transformation was not just about herself, but about everyone around her. The peak of this phase came when Hannah was invited to speak at a small community event. The theme was simple: overcoming hardship. At first, she hesitated. Shyness and fear of judgment threatened to paralyze her. "Who am I to talk about overcoming?" she thought. But when she remembered the woman who had collapsed on her living room floor, powerless to go on, and the same woman who now rises every day with faith, she understood that her story could be a beacon for others walking in darkness. On the day of the event, stepping onto the school's makeshift stage, Hannah trembled. Her hands sweated, and her voice faltered at first. But once she remembered the strength guiding her, the words began to flow. She spoke of
The following days marked the beginning of a new phase in Hannah Peterson's life. If before she had learned to face emptiness, to embrace her emotions, and to rediscover her essence, now the time had come to transform all of that into daily practice, into a conscious lifestyle. It was no longer about emotional survival, but about flourishing, about creating a reality aligned with the dreams in her heart. At dawn, Hannah established a ritual that became sacred. Before even opening the curtains to let the sunlight in, she sat on the edge of her bed, closed her eyes, and breathed deeply. With each breath, she could feel life pulsating through her body, as if every cell awakened with a new purpose. Then she repeated simple but powerful affirmations of gratitude. I am grateful for another day. I am grateful for the opportunity to begin again. I am grateful for all I have lived and for all that is yet to come. This small gesture became a foundation, an anchor against turbulent days. Little by little, gratitude was no longer just a mental exercise, but a natural state of being. As she walked down the streets, she noticed details that once went unnoticed. The laughter of a child crossing the square, the fragrance of flowers in an ordinary garden, the gentle breeze brushing against her skin. Each detail carried a message. Life was alive in her, and she was alive in life. Through this process, Hannah discovered a powerful truth. The energy we emit directly shapes the energy we receive. When she remained in gratitude and openness, doors that once seemed closed began to open. An unexpected work call arrived. An invitation to speak at a local university appeared. Or someone who needed to hear exactly what she had to say crossed her path. Yet it wasn't always easy. There were days when sadness tried to return, days when doubt whispered that perhaps it was all just an illusion. In those moments, Hannah understood that self-awareness was not about living in permanent happiness, but about consciously choosing where to remain despite the fluctuations of the mind. If pain surfaced, she didn't deny it, but she also didn't feed it. She welcomed it like a frightened child and then let it go. This emotional maturity made her realize that for years she had believed external forces dictated her life. Now she understood that true power was within, not in the arrogant sense of controlling the universe, but in the humble sense of choosing her vibrations, her thoughts, and her actions. And that choice, repeated day after day, was creating a reality more and more aligned with her desires. It was during this period that a special invitation reached her. A close friend, inspired by Hannah's transformation, asked her to share her story with a small group of women also seeking a fresh start. At first, she hesitated. Revealing her vulnerabilities, exposing her pain, was still delicate. But upon reflection, she understood that maybe her experience was the key others needed to set themselves free. That night, sitting in front of 10 women gathered in a circle, Hannah opened her heart. She spoke of loneliness, of the weight of failure, of silent tears, but also of the light she had found in the middle of chaos. As she spoke, she noticed discreet tears on some faces. And when she finished, she was surprised with warm hugs and words of gratitude. One woman said, "You put into words exactly what I feel but didn't know how to express. Now I know I'm not alone." That moment was a turning point. Hannah realized that her journey wasn't just about herself. Her story was a seed that could bloom in the hearts of others. What once felt like only pain had turned into purpose. Soon, she was being invited to more gatherings, circles of conversation, and even small local events. Without realizing it, her life was aligning with a greater mission, to be a channel of inspiration and healing for those who were once where she had been. As her external life expanded, her inner world became increasingly solid. She kept her meditation rituals, wrote daily in her gratitude journal, and created powerful affirmations that she repeated in front of the mirror. One of them became her personal mantra. I am worthy of love, abundance, and peace. Everything I desire is already on its way, because I vibrate at the frequency of what I want to live. Over time, Hannah noticed subtle yet profound changes. Prosperity began to manifest in unexpected ways. Small jobs multiplied. Invitations that once seemed impossible became reality. The flow of abundance felt natural, not by chance, but because she had changed her vibration.
More than money or external achievements, what truly transformed her life was the peace in her heart. She no longer felt the urgency to prove anything to anyone. The need to compete, to show results, or to meet others' expectations vanished. What mattered was coherence between what she felt and how she lived. It was in this state that Hannah had one of the greatest insights of her journey. True freedom is not doing everything you want, but living in alignment with the essence of your being. This clarity brought lightness, and with it the feeling that she was finally on the right path. On the last page of her journal, she wrote, "If before I walked lost, today I know each step brings me closer to myself. There is no more rush, no more fear, only trust in the flow of life. I do not seek outside what is already within. I am, I vibrate, I attract." And in that instant, without needing external signs, Hannah realized her life had already changed. It was not a promise for the future. It was a present fact. She was already living the transformation she had so long sought. Over time, Hannah Peterson began to notice that life truly responded to the vibration she emitted. Each action, thought, and feeling was like a wave cast into the universe, and the universe responded with signs, opportunities, and events that reflected her inner state. This deep understanding brought not only practical results, but also an emotional freedom she had never experienced before. Professional projects multiplied almost magically. Acquaintances remembered her for work opportunities. Invitations to events and lectures appeared, and chance encounters became meaningful connections. Hannah neither boasted nor sought recognition. She simply understood that all of this was a natural consequence of her consistency in gratitude, faith, and visualizing what she desired. But despite these external achievements, Hannah knew the real test was to maintain her inner balance in the face of unexpected challenges. One such challenge arose when a work contract which seemed certain was canceled at the last minute. For a moment, the old anxiety tried to resurface, that familiar sense of despair. But instead of collapsing, she breathed deeply, sat with her journal, and reflected on all the times the universe had already provided alternative paths when something seemed lost. She realized that the law of attraction didn't mean the absence of problems, but rather the ability to respond consciously, keeping the trust that the best was yet to come. And as always, new opportunities began to appear. A former client reached out with an urgent project, which, besides being well paid, perfectly aligned with her skills and passions. Hannah saw that each apparent failure was in fact preparation for something better, something greater. This expanded vision also reflected in her personal relationships. Hannah began cultivating more authentic connections, surrounding herself with people who vibrated on the same frequency. Friends who criticized or envied her progress gradually drifted away, while connections based on mutual support, inspiration, and trust flourished. She understood that the energy of those around her directly affected her own vibration, and to keep growing, she had to choose her circle carefully. Her relationship with David also underwent profound transformation. Witnessing Hannah's change, he realized their marriage didn't need to be defined by past limitations. Together, they began practicing visualization exercises, expressing gratitude daily, and planning their dreams as a team. This practice strengthened not only their bond, but also their shared confidence that together they could overcome anything. Hannah also discovered that true transformation wasn't just about manifesting external results, but about becoming a source of inspiration for others. She began receiving messages from people who had attended her talks or read her posts. Some shared that her words gave them the courage to take steps they once thought impossible, starting their own business, leaving a toxic relationship, or simply believing they deserved happiness. This external impact reinforced Hannah's belief that personal transformation is also a tool for collective change. She wasn't just creating her own life, she was positively influencing the lives of those around her. And every time she received such messages, her heart filled with gratitude. reminding her that every tear shed in the past, every night of despair, every fear overcome had been worth it. The pinnacle of this phase came when Hannah decided to create an even more detailed vision board. Not just a collage of images, but a synthesis of all her dreams, goals, and intentions. This time, she included not only pictures, but also words, affirmations, and power phrases.
After months of daily practice, inner transformation, and absolute focus on her vision, Hannah Peterson finally felt complete in her manifestation process. What once seemed like a distant dream, a vision board only imagined, was now becoming tangible reality in every aspect of her life. She had overcome debts, rebuilt her self-esteem, found financial stability, strengthened her relationships, and, above all, awakened to the power that had always been within her. The impact of this change was not only personal, but also profound within her family circle. David, her husband, began to engage even more in the processes of growth and gratitude. Their conversations became filled with depth, intention, and hope. Hannah's children were not just observing the transformation, but being inspired by it, learning from an early age that thoughts, feelings, and actions aligned with their desires could create reality. The home, once marked by fear and worry, now pulsed with positive energy, laughter, and confidence in the future. But Hannah didn't want her experience to remain only her own. Inspired by the people she had already helped in talks and community events, she decided to create a series of weekly gatherings to share her discoveries. In these meetings, she told her story with total transparency. Every tear, every hardship, every moment of doubt, and, of course, every achievement and manifestation. She emphasized that the law of attraction was not magic in the fanciful sense, but rather a conscious practice of mental, emotional, and spiritual alignment with what one desires. At one of these gatherings, a participant asked with emotion, "Hannah, how did you know you were really attracting all of this?" Hannah smiled and replied sincerely, "There's no way to know in the beginning. What happens is that you learn to trust. You trust the process, you trust yourself, and you trust the universe. With every small step, every feeling of gratitude, you realize that you're already creating the life you want even before you see the concrete evidence." In that moment, Hannah realized that her greatest legacy was not the money, the job, or the travel she had achieved, but the awakened consciousness she was now sharing with others. Every story she told, every person she inspired, was a reflection of her own transformation, multiplying the impact of her journey. As she contemplated her life, Hannah remembered the vision board she had created months earlier. She walked up to it, observing every detail, every image, every word carefully chosen, and then she smiled. Everything was there, exactly as she had envisioned. The job she desired, financial security, family balance, personal and spiritual growth. But more than that, she recognized that the true manifestation was her inner transformation. She understood that even when external dreams came true, the real power came from the consciousness cultivated daily. Gratitude, faith, visualization, and aligned actions were not just tools, they were ways of living, a philosophy that could be applied to any goal in any area of life. At this point, Hannah decided to take an even greater step. She created a public online journal, sharing insights, gratitude exercises, visualization techniques, and real manifestation stories from people she knew. Her intention was clear, to allow anyone to realize that the life they desired was not in distant dreams, but already within them, ready to be manifested. The response was immediate. People from different parts of the world began sending messages sharing that by following Hannah's practices, they had achieved small victories that once seemed impossible. Overcoming deaths, finding jobs, improving relationships, and even healing old emotional wounds. Each message reinforced Hannah's certainty that the law of attraction was not just a theory, but a living practice that transforms from the inside out. And as she reflected on the entire journey, Hannah felt a deep peace.
She realized that perfect manifestation was not about achieving something external, but about becoming the person capable of creating that reality. The vision board, the jobs, the opportunities, and the universe's gifts were only tangible evidence of something much greater: the awakening of her consciousness, the alignment with her essence, and the ability to live in wholeness. Before going to bed that night, Hannah looked at her children, sleeping peacefully, and thought, "Everything I did wasn't just for me, it was for us. For them, for the love we built, for the strength I discovered, and for everyone I can inspire to follow the same path." And in that moment, Hannah Peterson smiled with complete conviction, knowing that she had completed a cycle of transformation that would forever change her life and plant seeds of change in the world. She had proven that when someone chooses to believe, act with faith, maintain gratitude, and align thoughts, feelings, and actions, there are no limits to what can be manifested. If you were touched by Hannah Peterson's story and want to see how to apply these techniques in your own life, leave a comment below sharing which part of the story touched your heart the most. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell so you don't miss the next inspiring story of real transformation. And on the final screen, click to watch the next video where we'll share another emotional story of someone who completely changed their life with the law of attraction.